Hey, it's good to see all of you on the Zoom. I have to turn around to see who you are. I wonder, starting with you, Errol, since we've got some new people here, if you just introduce yourself. Let's go up on the upper left with Errol first. Tell you just who you are.
Oh, of course. Errol Zimmerman, board member. Pleased to be
Davis. Okay, and I'm Barbara Kiernan, and I'm on the board as well. And next to me is Ellen.
We're in a different order on all our screens. So
Yeah.
Ellen Ryan, board member, David Ryan.
And Ellen is in charge of a lot of the interviews that we do. And Joan?
Hi, Joan Powell, treasurer, and Marta Rance next to me.
Member.
And Joan is really in charge of a lot of different things. In fact, everything that we do probably has something to do with Joan. And Susan, you're muted as well.
Yes, I'm a member and actually an ex-presenter. one of the meetings, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of this. It was a little difficult last time, so I'm hoping that this will be clearer.
Very good. And then Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Rattay. I'm in Wisconsin right now. My husband Sergio is at work, but he is originally from Pueblo Yaqui, just south of Obregon.
Very good. Well, welcome to all of you, and welcome to everybody who is here with us in the room. I'm really delighted to be here. I'm only here for 2 weeks, and I'm here because Norbert happened. And I'm here because Donna is writing about it. And I'm here because you guys are here, and there's so much to do, and it's lots of fun. So I want to start today telling you a little bit about what we're going to do. First of all, we are going to listen to some stories that each and every one of you probably has. Either your personal stories because you were here, or stories of neighbors or friends or workers, stories that actually relate to Norbert. This year and next year and beyond, we're hoping to be able to celebrate and to remember and to recognize all that happened during Norbert. And we're doing this in a variety of ways. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to tell you about some really exciting things that have happened since last week happened. You think a week doesn't make a difference? Let me tell you what's happened in this week has been remarkable. So now I want to invite a young woman who is going to have Lorna speak for her because she's going to tell us in Spanish, and many of you will understand this. This is our young lady who is Claritza. And Claritza was actually involved in the shelter area near Las Delicias. So, gracias, Claritza, por así venirte con nosotros. Y yo me acuerdo que hiciste ese dibujo hace muchos años. Tuviste 8 años al hacer ese dibujo. Ahora tienes 23. Ahora ya tienes mucha perspectiva sobre todo eso. Entonces, cuéntanos de lo que pasó en esta noche cuando hiciste ese dibujo después. Pero, ¿qué experiencia tienes? Entonces, ustedes todos. Pero habla tú.
La experiencia que tuvimos, que fue una noche muy para todas las personas que vivimos, muy horrible. Más para nosotros los niños que no entendíamos muchas cosas a la hora de despertarnos nuestros papás y decirnos, tenemos que salirnos, el arroyo está subiendo mucho.
This was a terrible experience for me, especially for children who didn't quite understand what was going on. We were woken up in the middle of the night by our parents saying we had to leave immediately.
Éramos muy pequeños. En mi casa éramos yo y mi hermana. Fui la primera en despertar y mirar lo que estaba sucediendo. Estábamos arriba, mi papá nos bajó de la cama, el agua a mí me llegaba a las rodillas y a mi hermanita era más chaparrita que yo, ella ya le estaba subiendo un poquito.
When the water started coming, we were in bed. My father came in and woke us up. I was the oldest, and even then when I first woke up, the water was just above my knees. My sister was even younger than I was, and the water was up to her mid-thigh. It was a terrifying experience.
En eso mi papá agarró el colchón de la otra cama y lo puso sobre la cama donde nos tenían. Nos subieron arriba de una cama, por lo mismo que estaba subiendo mucho el agua, en los que ellos recogían lo poquito que se podía salvar, intentando cerrar las puertas para que el agua no se saliera todo lo que teníamos y cosas así.
My father grabbed the mattress from the other bed and put it on top of our bed. My sister and I climbed up on the bed while our parents were busy trying to collect and save anything that they could possibly find. They kept looking around.
Al principio pensamos que mi mamá decía que todo iba a estar bien, que el agua iba a bajar, pero no, el agua comenzó a aumentar y aumentar.
My parents were busy closing all the doors, hoping that that would keep the water out. And they kept telling us kids that everything would be fine, that we'd be okay. But the water kept rising.
Cuando miramos que el agua comenzó a aumentar más, papá nos sacó por una ventana, mi mamá me cargaba a mí, mi papá cargó a mi hermana y tuvimos que salir por ahí.
When we noticed that the water kept rising, our parents grabbed us. My father grabbed me and my mother grabbed my sister, and we had to come out of a window in order to escape the rising waters.
Ya cuando salimos, ya habían tumbado la barda que de mi vecina, habían tumbado esa barda para poder salir a las Delicias, que ahí fue donde nos refugiamos todos esos días.
By the time we got outside, we'd noticed that people had knocked down part of the wall. I'm just going to add a little insight here. That wall belonged to Stephanie Myers, and the other hole in the wall belonged to my husband and myself. So they climbed out. There were people going through that hole in the wall to escape the waters.
Ya que pasamos la barda, llegamos a las Delicias, no entendíamos muchas cosas. Entonces mi mamá solo nos decía que nos durmiéramos a mí y a mi hermana, que todo iba a estar bien. Nos dormimos pocas horas por lo mismo que había más niños y los demás niños lloraban y se querían ir a sus casas, pero muchos no entendían y nosotros mirábamos hacia afuera. La lluvia no paró en toda la noche.
The rain kept coming all night long. We wound up going to sleep while we were rested down on a porch, but there were other children around us and they didn't understand. They were crying and they kept saying they wanted to go home. They didn't understand where they were or why they were there. And yet the rain kept coming.
Al día siguiente fue cuando pudimos ver de que ya no había muchas cosas de nosotros. Fue mi papá a ver qué se podía salvar de lo pocas cosas que teníamos en nuestra casa. Y fue cuando llegó mi papá, fue mi papá y dos tíos que eran los más mayores que había. Fue cuando se dieron cuenta que esta casa ya no estaba. Se la había llevado el arroyo, se había llevado los árboles de la casa que estaban juntos, el carro de mi abuelo, porque cerca de esta casa y de estos árboles había este carro, porque mi abuelo tiene una ladrillera, era el carro de trabajo que tenía mi abuelo, fue lo que se llevó el arroyo.
The next morning when the water was down, my father went out to go see what he could save from the water. And we noticed that there were many things that had changed. She drew this picture after the flood, and she noticed that this house was no longer there. The trees were no longer there. This was her grandfather's truck that he used in his ladrillera, his brick-making business, and the truck was no longer there.
Y
el perro?
Mi cachorro, mi abuelo lo fue a buscar porque era el que trabajaba con él, siempre lo cargaba arriba del carro, y esa noche durmió dentro del carro y se fue en el carro.
Then her father went looking for the little puppy because the puppy that night had spent the night in the truck, and her father looked for the dog and they never could find the dog.
Se lo llevó porque dormía dentro del carro. Y fue donde se lo
The
llevó.
water took the truck and along with the dog away.
Y fue donde perdimos ropa, la televisión, pantalones, todo eso. Y la lluvia nunca paró. Toda la noche llovió, la madrugada, hasta que amaneció.
And we lost the television and many clothes and lots of personal belongings, and the water kept coming all night long. It wasn't until morning when the rain finally stopped.
Y aquí estamos yo, mi familia. Esta palma aún está en mi casa. Es en la palma donde nosotros ahí esperábamos a nuestros papás cuando estábamos recibiendo la ayuda. Usted miró la palma que está en mi casa. y para poder sacar muchas cosas, este árbol lo golpearon de abajo, pero nunca lo pudieron tumbar.
The palm tree behind her house is still there. That's where they gathered. And they managed to amass some of their possessions around that because the water hit the bottom of the palm tree, but it never was high enough to disturb the palm.
Y esta es mi familia, mi papá, mi mamá, mi hermana y yo. Yo era la más
And then
pequeña.
in the picture next to the palm tree is her father, her mother, her sister, and herself. Underneath a bright sun, which came out the next morning.
Y Claritza, ¿cómo es que viniste así a hacer ese dibujo? ¿Por qué lo hice? ¿Por qué
Era-
lo hiciste?
Mi mente en ese momento era lo que yo más me aterrorizaba, más me gustaba. Y una vez me gustaba dibujar cuando era pequeña. Y una vez estaba con Elena y con Elena. Y yo comencé a dibujar y Elena ya fue cuando me preguntó por qué dibujaba. Porque yo le decía que era lo que perdí y lo que gané después de lo sucedido.
Barbara asked her, why did she come by this? Why did she start to draw this? She said, well, she was working on, she loves to draw and has drawn for many, many years, but she was working with the psychologist, Elena, and she started to draw this. And Elena said to her, what are you drawing? And she said, these are all of the things that we lost, but it's also all of the things that we managed to keep.
Y en ese momento era lo más presente que tenía.
And that's what was most apparent, most present in her mind at the time.
¿Y qué pasó? Así, ¿cuánto tiempo te demoró a ti, a tu familia, a recuperar todo, a rehacer la casa y volver a una vida más o menos normal?
Barbara asks, how long did it take to have your family return to a normal life and rebuild some of the things that you lost?
Más de un año nos demoró en volver a la realidad, podríamos decir, en ir recuperando cosas. De hecho, nosotros pues teníamos una cama y por muchas cosas que nos afectó el arroyo, mi papá y mi mamá le tocó dormir en el suelo y yo y mi hermana en una cama pequeña que nos regalaron. Cuando vinieron las donaciones, nos donaron una cama, un colchón y ahí dormíamos yo y mi hermana.
It took more than a year to really get back to any kind of normalcy. And there was only one bed. They did receive a bed as a donation, but she and her sister slept on that bed and her parents had slept on the floor in that year.
¿Y qué más, o sea, experiencia quiere contarnos? ¿Te acuerdas de algo especial que pasó o en el momento, en los años siguientes? ¿Seguían ustedes hablando del Norbert y lo contaste así a tus niños?
Sí.
¿Y qué piensan ellos?
Al principio ellos no podían creer que un arroyo tan grande, porque ahorita el arroyo es muy ancho, antes era más pequeño, nos había afectado, había subido hasta arriba, hasta nuestra casa, porque nuestra casa no es tan pegada al arroyo. Y ellos decían, mamá, ¿cómo puede ser posible que el arroyo haya subido hasta arriba? Sí, y ellos iban al arroyo y venían corriendo, decían, mamá, está muy lejos, decía, y no podían creerlo al principio ellos. Ya después, cuando ellos ya comenzaron a comprender más las cosas, miraron que cuando llueve el arroyo se llena muy arriba y entonces ellos dicen, mamá, ¿va a subir el arroyo? Mamá, ¿va a hacer eso? Y ahorita el problema que tenemos nosotros de esa parte de ahí es que si el arroyo crece, nosotros no podemos cruzar al otro lado. No tenemos un puente, no tenemos ningún medio para poder salir porque el arroyo crece muy alto.
She was asked if she tells her own children about this. And she said, yes, she does. But her children are in disbelief that the arroyo could have had that much water in it because it's wider now than it was then. And they go down and play it and they say the water can't be. But then when it starts to rain and they see the water come up, they look at her and they say, Mom, are we going to be okay? Is the arroyo going to come up? Is the arroyo going to get us? I personally can understand how a child would be concerned after hearing some of these stories. One of the things that she's very concerned about is if this were to ever happen again, there are no bridges there. There's no way for her family to get from one side of the arroyo to the other where there would be safety. Just about the only way to escape it would be to knock down those walls that are behind them again.
Hay que poner una puerta o sea, para poder pasar, ¿no?
Sí.
Barbara suggests that Antonio and I, or even Stephanie, put in a door in our back so that we don't have to worry about having the wall knocked down. And actually, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Ay, qué bueno. Bueno, Claritza, muchísimas gracias por haber venido para explicarnos tus experiencias y ese dibujo. También hay un dibujo aquí y eso va a estar en el libro. Famoso, será la artista del siglo. Y ella también nos ha dicho que podemos, o sea, entrevistar a ti y a tu familia y para una colección permanente de archivos. ¿Ok? Sí. Bueno.
She has acknowledged that she is willing to be interviewed, both she and her family, so that we have an archive of some of the personal experiences and some of the things that people experienced during this monumental event that affected everyone in the area during that time.
Así que muchísimas, pero hay una.
Ese es la pregunta es que si es un evento tan traumático que si te afecta como adulto ya de hoy.
No me afecta, pero sí temo a que nuevamente pueda suceder eso por mis hijos. Porque a mí no me gustaría que lo que pasó a mis hijos lo pasaran conmigo.
She said she doesn't have
Lo que
any
pasé yo.
personal scars from the event, but what she does worry about every time it rains is if it will become a flood effect and it will affect her children. She doesn't want her children to be affected in the way she was affected, which I think is a pretty normal experience, a pretty normal reaction from a parent.
Mi hermana sí quedó ella afectada. Cada vez que ella llovía, ella no quería estar en mi casa. Ella decía que se quería ir.
Her sister has been affected because every time it rains, her sister refuses to stay inside their house and wants to go somewhere else.
Ella sí le teme mucho al río. De hecho, ella se fue de Álamos porque quedó muy aterrorizada.
Sí, se fue.
Her
Sí, vive
sister-
en Obregón.
Her sister now lives in Obregón because she left Álamos because of the fear that she had inside herself every time that it rained here.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias, Claritza. Yo sé que tienes que trabajar, así que muchísimas gracias. Y hasta la próxima, porque vamos a verte de nuevo.
Ok.
O sea, para hacer una película, para grabar, o sea, tus historias. Y gracias. Y eso ya es tuyo. Les dejo. Gracias, Lorna. Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you very, very much, Claritza, for joining us today. She does need to leave early this morning because she has a job and she needs to get there. But we will continue to interview you and take some of your perspectives of all of this time when Norbert was a part of Álamos. Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias. Thank you. Now, and if you two will go over there, I think we'll go ahead and ask Memo to just continue. And then we'll go to Ellen, and then we'll start going around the room. Thank you. Thank you very much. Gracias, Claritza. And thank you, Lorna. Thank you very much. You were her perfect voice. And don't go too far because you've got your own story to tell. Okay, very good. Memo, could you please share your stories with us? We've heard so many things from so many people, but I know you lived through this firsthand. Could you come over here and join me? Now you're on the hot seat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Has to.
Okay, there you go. This is
My story is that we were hearing on the radio that was
Is it hard to hear? Just let's calibrate the sound.
Hurricane
Here, I'm
coming,
gonna pull this a little bit. Got it?
but it was going directly into Guatabampo, I mean, the town out on the beach.
Thank you.
And well, we said, well, nothing is going to happen. And then we knew that families from Guatabampo came to Álamos. And they got here at the wrong time. So people tell us about kids climbing balconies and trees, yeah, from Guatabampo. I believe that the hurricane, it changed its course and it came directly into Mount Álamos. And there was a cold front there that night. And that caused a big thing. 80% of that rain went the other side of the mountain. 20% approximately came this side. The next morning, we could see all trees. Clean areas way up at the top. There were hundreds of pine trees that were pulled out by the water, and they came all the way down. And these, I believe, those trees, were got to the bridge over there, and they blocked the bridge. And then the water started going back and back and back. And then there was a time when the bridge, the water broke the bridge, or put it aside, didn't break it all. Got one side and put it aside, and that was the problem. In back of my house, I had a dike wall, maybe 12 feet high, but the water was still 16 feet. And so 6 of those feet of water went directly into. So when Anna woke up and told me there is water coming into the house, I was asleep, and I said, well, she's dreaming. And then finally I was able to touch the water by my bed, and muddy water, more mud than water. And we couldn't walk in that muddy water, sticky, and we tried to get out, but we couldn't. The water level was the same inside the house as on the outside. So we couldn't open the doors. We tried, first we went on top of a table, then we tried to break an AC and get out, and go to the roof, but we couldn't do that. So we had just to wait. There were a lot of noise out on the street, cars, hitting each other, maybe hundreds of cars for about an hour, from I guess 10 o'clock to maybe 11 p.m. And then people in the cars yelling, calling for help. And we couldn't do anything. I tried to call my neighbors, but nobody was there. They were all up on the roof. So we stayed there. And then I remember the mayor came to our street around midnight, and she talked to all of us. And the next morning we saw, I want to say something. Before I went to bed, I saw frogs jumping on my bed. And I was never able to understand why. And I remember old people used to say that animals can feel that there is something bad coming. Okay. So, and then all the water went very high up into the house, 6 feet or something, about 6 feet. And then I thought the water level was going to go all the way up to the ceiling. And that was my fear, what are we going to do inside the house? As Claritza said, where can we go? And then I lost 2 vans. I had a Ford and a Blazer. The Blazer was not mine, really. It was a friend had left it with us for the summer. But I remember maybe 2 days later, I went to look for my vans. And I found them, but they were all dismantled. Nothing inside, no motor, no tires, nothing. Then the first day, we saw ambulances all over town. So at that moment, we were both having high blood pressure. I have had diabetes almost part of my life. And I needed medication because we lost everything. I mean, everything was in the mud, not only clothing, but furniture, everything was there. And then friends started to come. Friends from Navajo, from everywhere, no, Oregon. We had to hire people to clean up for maybe 10 days, up to 2 weeks. But then there were a crew from Navajo who did a great cleaning, I mean. But then also Dr. Acosta came and cleaned up our home, but also all the homes in my neighborhood. And then I remember those faces that friends from the American community that used to come with food supplies, kitchenware, towels, sheets, tools, because we didn't have anything. And I am very thankful for all these people. Every time I see them, I want to kiss them. One thing happened, you know. We saw soldiers, and the soldiers came into our home. And they said they came from, what was it? Natural Disaster Department in Mexico City. And they took everything out. Furniture, washing machine, refrigerator, stoves. And then I also saw people taking everything out, you know, since the soldiers just laid everything out on the street. And I asked them, I was afraid to ask, I remember, but whether it was the Air Force or the Navy or the Army, I asked him the question. No, he said, Natural Disaster Department is going to take care of you. They're going to give you everything back. Then we got the Christian churches from Oregon who used to come, and the first day they laid, it was food supplies on the sidewalks on both sides of the street for people to come and pick up. The second week it was shoes, the same thing. And then the third week was clothing for 2 blocks on both sides of on the sidewalks on both sides of the streets on Morelos Street. Yes, my Morelos has been my street since 1968. One day, people came, whether from, the government, federal, state, local, I don't know. They made an offer to me, we're going to give you a brand new house. Okay, good. And can I see, you know, where is the house gonna be? Up in the hills. Good, wonderful. We don't want to live here anymore. And one day I saw a drawing. It was not a picture, a drawing of, it was only a small house, you know, 1 room, maybe a little kitchen. But we did not accept the offer. Then we decided to keep working on our house. The next year, March 2009, we built a new wall in our backyard. And then we went 16 feet high. Well, I hope Claritza is not there's going to be
You learn.
yeah, bigger hurricane, much bigger flood. Dr. Navarro was the next mayor. One day he became mayor of Álamos in September 2009, and then he talked to all of us and promised he was going to pave the street. 2009, in November. So he fixed that, he paved our street in 2010. And yeah, he did it. He only built one room for one of my neighbors who was in a very bad shape. And that was wonderful because, you know, that lady lived there, well, for many years. Banks came from Navajo, we're going to offer loans to us. So I don't know, I decided to make my first loan to my teachers union, and the interest was really low, I remember. That was my, to build the wall. Then we had to plaster our house, new plaster, all over. Because the plaster kept getting green, you know, the algae, I guess, yeah. And then that was 2010, and then again, we decided to put in new water lines and sewer lines because they were not working. They had not been working since the hurricane. And this happened in 2015 when we decided to do that. And then new plaster on the wall. A new loan to my teachers union. And we laid a new floor in the house. I have been asked many questions about the smell. Yes, we had that smell there for many, I don't know, it was for many years. What caused that? Well, the water went into the mines up there, and this was why the soldiers came. For years, mines have been using, or miners have been using chemicals. They talked about cyanide, they talked about mercury, they talked, well, and that was their worry. And they said, well, we need to take everything out. You know, that was it. And I think they were right. Along with all of that, I want to tell you a little story. A little boy came to Álamos when he was 5. He came with his dad, and he learned Spanish very fast. In 1 year, he would call everybody in town by his nickname. He was so fluent. I mean, my God, I did not speak that Spanish. He was fluent, but with all the Sonora expressions, phrases, the terminology, Sonora terminology. And one day, his father passed away. Adam Lacan had to go back to his mother, I guess, in the US. When he heard, I think he heard about the hurricane, and he came right away. What he did was he used to hire taxi cabs to go into Navajo and buy all kinds of things, and he would bring and give the people, especially along the riverbed. And this he did for about 10 days until he ran out of money. And then Adam left. Maybe a year later, I tried to call him. Somebody said he was living he came from Texas. And when I called him in November 2009, he was living in Oregon. And I just wanted to say thank you, but I could never get a hold of him. I hope one day I can see Adam Lacan again. Adam Lacan is an unknown hero. Without being here, he came. There are many people who cry out to the 7 winds that they're going to help and support people. But that never happened. It was only promises, I guess. You call them promises. But there were other people like Adam, who never said anything. He was so quiet. And he came. This is Adam LeCount should have a monument someplace. Yeah, in Álamos. Adam LeCount. Yeah, there are two kinds of people. Well, God made, there is good, there is bad, there is black, there is white, gray, small. And God made us the same. There are people who never say anything, and they're there to help and support, no matter. But there are other people that love to talk and make promises and speak, as we say in Spanish, to the seven winds.
Same thing in English. We know those people.
Well, this is, I believe, my story, and thank you very much.
This is really a personal story, and I wish we knew Adam as well.
Well,
Do you have any questions for Memo? I don't know what I would ask. Pam?
I was wondering, how did people in Álamos do that useless now? Thrown around by the mud.
Mine went only one went down the river, 1 block, 2 blocks, and then the other one about 5 blocks. But many of them went clear all the way to the Cuchahaki River. As I said before, 80% of the rain fell on the other side of the mountain, and that was all of that water went directly into Cuchahaki River. And so those cars maybe went all the way to El Fuerte or on the other river, what is Fuerte River, yeah.
Did
And
they
maybe,
salvage-
sorry?
Did they salvage the cars? How did they get them
No.
out of the town? All this metal, how did they do that?
Well, they had to do it, and it took them a long time. But the cars that were very close here to Álamos, well, how should I say it? It was people that thought, when a natural disaster comes, nobody else owns anything. That's the, I don't know. I tried to understand that. They didn't claim that's Memo's car over there. No.
Fine.
No, but the same thing with the house. Yeah, all those things, Sorry?
We take out and for a long time after you find cars and there's the cars that are
Yeah. Yeah, the river, right?
Junkyard of cars.
Yeah.
Is there?
The-
Yeah.
Yeah, some people, did that, they tried to open up a junkyard. There were junkyards over here, junkyards over there, and more junkyards way over there. So, yeah, yes. But I want you to really try to figure it out, is it human condition when a natural disaster comes and then nobody owns anything? But as Claritza said, I want to say it again, we lost many things, but we won many friends.
Very nicely.
We won friends that are going to, if the hurricane lasted for 1 hour, these new friends that we now have and enjoy are going to last forever. Till the end of my life.
And Jean has a question.
It was dark, completely dark, There were nothing, no power, no telephones, we lost everything, So in the dark, we heard, when the cars are being taken away by the waters. I mean, maybe my cars were so badly crushed. I mean, I don't know. I never saw that, but there were hundreds of cars that were parked on the Alameda, around the market, Morelos, that other street up there, Madero Street. You saw that wall over there on Madero. The water over there was 8 feet high. So the water in the back of my house was, as I said, 16 feet high, you know. Yeah, the next morning, I think we saw deer. We saw dead deer. We saw all kinds of animals, and we heard of even people, you know. I heard voices of people crying out for help, but nobody could do anything. I mean, it was completely dark, and we couldn't get out. I think on my street it was 8 feet of water. At my home, it was 6 feet at that moment. I mean, we couldn't even open the doors, but many things, big rocks were coming down also. Not only on the arroyo bed, but also on my street. People, cars, animals, maybe horses, cows. I only saw deer out there, but I remember seeing a lot of pine trees, all along the arroyo bed. That arroyo we call Aduana Arroyo, but it was a river that night, you know, it was Álamos River. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, very much, Memo. We're at a shelter rescue effort in Las Delicias area. So Lorna, I'm just gonna turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. I have a confession to make. I wasn't here. I was up in Tucson at that point. Our kids were still there. And I remember Antonio calling me, and he called me on his cell phone because there was no other communication. And he said, you wouldn't believe it. And this is a man who can sleep through anything. The water was rushing down Las Delicias in front of our house. It was rushing behind us in the arroyo. He slept through all of it. What woke him up was when he heard the back wall by the arroyo behind us being broken down. And he saw people coming through the wall. And that's when he realized that this was a major problem. He called me and he said, don't come down today, because I'd planned on coming down that day. He said, don't come down today because the road's out. You won't get through anyway. But he said, I have a mission for you. I want you to see if you can collect some money from friends of ours and pick up some of the things that are needed here. So I got busy on the phone and I called a list of the clients that we had through the hunting. And as you all know, the Acosta family has been involved in hunting here in the Álamos area since the early 50s. So I got on the phone, I called some of our friends, the money started pouring in. So I got busy and started buying things to bring down. In the meantime, Antonio and Felipe, my brother-in-law, had gone to what is called La Isla de Cuba, which is a part of Guayparines. And they had taken in power washers and they were washing the mud off of houses. I remember one house was completely cantilevered out over the arroyo because the water had washed out everything underneath the foundation. And the house, you could watch the house just rock because it was only connected to God's green earth by about 1/3 of it. Needless to say, nobody could go in there. People had lost everything. So as they're starting to get other donations, Antonio called me, and I always get a chuckle when I tell this story. Antonio said, there are certain things that are being donated. We have lots of clothes being donated. We have lots of shoes being donated. He said, but there are 2 things that we really, really need that are not being donated. And I said, what are they? You know, tell me, I'll fill the car up as much as I can and bring it down. He said, children's clothes, babies, they don't have any clothes. But the other thing that he said that struck me as kind of an aha moment? Well, of course, he said, bring ladies underwear. And you would not believe the smiles and the stares that I got from people going into stores and asking for a variety of cup-size bras and panties in just about every size you can imagine. So I brought those down. I brought down sets of dishes. I brought down children's clothes. And I got into town not the day after the flood, but the following day I came down. The road was then open. I got home and Antonio was nowhere to be seen. It leaves a mark of those people that become lifelong friends and a mark of, as Memo says, who quietly just pitches in and does it. They don't want a pat on the back. They don't want to be recognized. They just want to help their neighbors. And those friends become lifelong friends. So in a way, Norbert was a blessing. It gave us all something that maybe we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Well, I tell you that yesterday I had the honor of speaking with Alfonso Valenzuela in a meeting. He's the city manager of sorts. And we were talking about this whole project and about the remembrances that people had, our desire to recognize it and to create something perhaps that we could do to recognize the strength and resilience. And at the end of it, he says, así, Álamos de pie. And I think that's one of the things we did see was Álamos strong with friends, recuperating as best it can, as quickly as it can, with scars that still remain. But those scars scarred over and new friendships were made. I was not here, but I am absolutely amazed at the stories I hear. So we are now within the last 10 minutes of our meeting. I want to share one kind of, Ellen, I'd love for you to share your story. And then I'll just tell you real briefly what we're doing. And thank you for all of you for bringing your stories. Believe me, you're not out of the woods. We're going to get those stories and we're going to get them somehow. But Ellen, would you join us? Ellen Price.
Yeah, I wasn't here at that time either. I came down later. But my mother and my sisters, we all have houses in La Campana, which is up on a hill. Well, my mother grew up on a ranch in Nebraska, and her mother watched the weather reports assiduously. And there was a snowstorm back in, I don't know, the 40s or 50s that just covered everything. But my grandmother had a barometer. She knew this storm was coming, so she got all her cattle in so that they would be safe. So my mother grew up with watching the weather, and she heard the report of this Norbert hurricane coming, and she told her bridge friends, the storm is coming, you better prepare for it. And they said, it's not going to bother us. Well, she went out because, you can't cross the arroyo when it rains. So she went out and she bought a bunch of food just to prepare for it. Well, then she was up there, and all her poor neighbors, they couldn't get across the arroyo to get any food. So she was able to distribute her food. This is my 91-year-old mother at that time. She was able to distribute her food to the various neighbors in her barrio. And she had a young man who was working for her then, who's still my neighbor. I didn't ask him what was going on because I knew he'd just tell me what had happened with my mom. So I asked Alfredo Ortiz, who lives in Las Higueras, up on a hill, what had happened with his family. And it was the same thing. They didn't have any problems except they couldn't get any food. So that was a big problem for people getting food because they couldn't get across the arroyos. But anyway, that's my story of my mom.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Alan. All right. And I think that's a story of preparedness too. I think a lot of people knew there was a storm. The storm was way out in the Pacific at a Category 4. As it came toward land, it was actually headed over the Baja. And everybody, it kept getting downgraded to a 3 and a 2. Then this cold wave came that Memo told us about, and it turned the storm, and it turned it back toward us. And then's when already we'd had so much rain, everything was saturated, and everything started to flow. Donna, would you come and join me for a minute on the hot seat? Because this is Donna's project. She did this in 2008. She wrote this book. All of you, Linda was at 4:00 opening cans. I'll never forget that you were doing that. And Lorna and everybody has a part of this. But for me, this started about a year ago when Donna said, hey, I got an idea. So I wonder if you would kind of just sum up all of your reflections on these 2 days that we worked with you. I'll tell you real quickly 3 things that are happening. We talked with Metzli at the museum. She is excited about putting our interns to work and putting us to work in making an exhibit that she says we should combine that with an educational programs for children. And the music teacher wants to write a ballad. And by the way, I think there should be an itinerant music. We should first go to the museum, then to the Palacio, then to Nelita Bourse, and then to the Casa de Cultura. I mean, hey, we're on the road, okay? So Metzli's with us, and I've talked with Alfonso at the city, and same thing. He said, this is great. This is where we're going. This is the kind of thing we want to do. Write it up. So when I go home, I'm going to write it up. I'm going to send it around to all of you, and I'm hoping to come out with a 1-page propuesto, a proposal to the city to see how we might make some commemorative plaques that might go up in the Barrio Norbert, or to the missing, or down in the Mercado, or where the bridge fell. Things that might be maybe designed by an artist, executed in metal, and then placed with a party for that neighborhood in that area, maybe a tree, maybe a bench, maybe a flower, whatever. So we're going to have also our interns working on these interviews. So one of the things I'm hoping to ask each one of you to do is to help me identify, not just me, but somebody else will probably be contacting you too, people that would be willing to talk to us like Claritza and like Memo, that we could go back. And Memo, I'm hoping I can get you back on tape, so I can transcribe you. That was way too much for me to remember. So, but I hope that you will all join with us in doing this work of doing the interviews, the archives, the memories, the plaques, the museums. Let's do it. But Donna, thank you for bringing me into this and for bringing all of us together to think through this issue.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Barbara, for engineering these last 2 weeks. It's just been wonderful having you here. And I so admire
just speak louder.
I so admire your energy and focus in getting things done. You've gotten more done in 2 weeks than, well, I won't finish that.
Well, I didn't bring my husband. That helped.
Oh. One way that we can get, I would like to, as you said, have more Mexican input than I was able to get. And one way of doing that is by using something called the JOT form. You talked about it the other day. And the link is too convoluted to read out to you. So Errol, I hope we'll be able to put it on the residence page, but it looks like this, and what it invites you to do, this doesn't show very well, but what it invites you to do is to upload your files from your computer if you've got photos. And when I say you, I'm hoping that you'll talk to the people that you know that have been affected, or that might have pictures, and if not pictures, then stories. Any story that you hear
or both, right?
Or both, yes. So that link will be on the residence page soon, and you'll be able to help us with this work of collecting the stories so that we have a variety of perspectives, because my slideshow focused on where I was downtown, but Memo was on Morelos, but the people in Huayparinas, in Las Delicias. We don't have any of those stories. So please help us with that work, and we'll continue working with the Palacio and with the museum, and putting something together that will be a permanent part of the archives. Hopefully a book that is bilingual. Perhaps maybe it has to be 2 books, we're not sure. But I'd like to have it as widespread as possible so that it's not a coffee table book that you have to pay a lot of money for. It's something that everybody has easy access to.
Even hoping as part of, for example, the museum, that we might actually have some oral interviews that are available. People can put on headsets and listen to people tell their story. And part of this book possibly might even make reference to links that you can go to hear those stories by people themselves. And if they give us their permission, even their face. So lots and lots to do. I must tell you that this man from the city, we met yesterday, Catherine and I did, with a man who is an ecological engineer. He works for the city. He was 16 at the time of Norbert. He is now 32. And let me tell you, this young man is just a marvel. What he told us was so comprehensive and so interesting. And I invited him to come back in the new year or next year to talk to us again. He does speak in Spanish, which we will have Lorna, somebody help him with. But nevertheless, it's going to be an exciting time to get to know these different perspectives. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do. I am so impressed. I don't have a house here, but you guys, each one of you, whether it's Amigos or Comadres or the History Association, and our friend up on the Zoom. If I turn around, you won't hear me. But thank you also for being here. Thank you, Mark and Ellen. Ellen, did I line up some interviews for you? I did. Absolutely. You're ready. And Susan and Joan, thank you. Joan sent us, oh my goodness, information that people have sent us. It's just like raining information, archival stuff. And of course, Donna and Errol. Thank you so much. I'm glad you had a good trip back. I'm up on the bus myself tomorrow, so we'll all wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you. Wait, I have one more thing. I promised Lorna she could tell us what all of the things are going on that you know about in town.
No, there's a world of things going on in town. And as we get started with, quote, the season, they seem to be building up more and more. Right now, there are envelopes at Teresita's, Café Luce, and at Kathy's Corner. These are envelopes for your donations for a Christmas gift for those wonderful people who sweep our streets and collect our garbage. They are the soul that keeps this beautiful Álamos, the jewel that we all love so much. And I'd like to remind everybody that these people do not get a regular salary. They are considered charity by the city, and they receive less than a minimum wage. They do not receive a Christmas bonus. The Christmas bonus that they receive is the donations that are made by this community and then distributed to them. They are distributed to them in envelopes with their name on them. They must sign for them. And in the case where that person cannot sign, they must put their thumbprint. It is very well organized. So as we enter the Christmas season and the seasons of giving, I ask each and every one of you to look deep down into your heart and think of these wonderful people, and then reach deep down into your wallet. So thank you very much for that. Now, something else going.
Lorna, excuse me, is there a deadline? Because we're still in Tucson, so.
Yes, Susan, there is a deadline for collections here in Álamos. And please remember, here in Álamos, cash is king, and we will accept both dollars and pesos. Please don't leave any Japanese yen. But the deadline for here in Álamos is December the 10th. For anybody who is not here in Álamos, if you would like to send a donation, and we prefer checks being sent to my address in Tucson, that deadline for receiving those, not mailing them, but receiving them in Tucson is December the 8th. So if anyone would like to do that, and there are connections on Residents of Álamos where you can get addresses as to where to send those. But again, there are envelopes here in Álamos, at Teresita's, at Luchi's, and at Kathy's Corner. On for some fun things going on here in Álamos. On behalf of Comadres, I would like to advise everyone that the Comadres is having their annual coffee on the 12th of December. They're going to publish something on Residents of Álamos. I don't have the exact times. I believe it's going to be at Nelita Bourse, Nelita Bourse at 10:30 on the 12th. Ceci has her wonderful angels again. So, please think about doing that. Comadres does an absolutely wonderful thing here in Álamos. Amigos de Educación, and if any of you know me, you know that this is the one that's very near and dear to my heart. Amigos de Educación on Friday the 15th will have a scarf sale and cards for sale at the home of Peg Franklin on Friday the 15th. And I believe that is from 3 to 5. And you're all welcome. Peg is receiving us in her home, in her yard, which is absolutely gorgeous. There will be beautiful silk scarves that Ann Gallagher has brought from Southeast Asia. And Peg will also be selling some of her own personal cards that she has done. Great idea for gifts. For my boys, they all say, Mom, a little bit of green would be a nice Christmas present. Green's kind of a Christmas feeling. So I always give them a nice card with a little bit of cash stuck in it. So it's a wonderful way to give your help a Christmas gift as well. So think about Peg's cards as well. And Amigos de Educación will have their annual meeting on Dia de los Reyes, the 6th of January, again at Nelita Bourse. You're all invited to that. And we will have our annual tea following that. So find out what Amigos has done last year, what we hope to do this coming year. And again, please bring your wallets. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Lorna. Okay, we are now adjourned, and thank you. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.